Hello, everybody. Today, I'm delighted to have with me a wonderful lady called Liz Drury. Um, so, I'm going to get Liz to give herself a bit of an introduction. So, Liz, could you please tell me a bit about your background and how you came to be a voiceover artist?
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I've been a voiceover artist for over 12 years now, which seems amazing to me still. My background actually is in archaeology. I have a PhD in archaeological science. And there is a bit of a link between the two because when I was studying for my PhD, my work was in the press. I'd done some work about prehistoric chewing gum and written an article about this for a magazine called British Archaeology. And the press picked up on this story, and I was on Radio 1, Radio 5 Live, Radio 4. My work was reported in the Times, the Telegraph, the Observer, the Mail, the Mirror. For about 2 weeks, I was in continual demand. And I got to know the people in the university PR department quite well because they had a little recording studio. And I used to go in there, and they would be a connection to the radio stations. So it would sound as if I was in the studio with the, reporter at Radio 4 or whatever. And I quite clearly remember sitting in front of the microphone in this little studio thinking, "I'm really enjoying this," and just really loving being in front of a microphone. So after I left, university, got my PhD, moved to North Lincolnshire, where I still live now, and started looking for a job and started as a volunteer actually at a local, community TV station, cable TV station, and ended up working there, worked there for about 3 years, and part of my job did include doing some voiceover work because the channel was very small and, run on a shoestring, and everything was done in-house, so I recorded voiceovers for adverts that went on the channel, for documentaries making or, other content for the channel, but I'd never actually had any training in voiceover, that came a bit later. So left there to have my kids. While I was off, the business got sold, there was no job to get back to, and I ended up doing something completely different and working in a sixth form college for a number of years. And then my husband, who is in the chemical industry, was asked if he'd go and work in the States for a couple of years. So we moved out to near Baltimore, and he was going to work, the kids were going to school, I was at a bit of a loose end. So I used the opportunity to train. So I actually trained in voiceover while we lived in America, because of course they do love a British accent over there.
Yeah.
Got my work permit, started my business in the States, and brought home a new career with me.
Wow. What an interesting start to a career. It's a real segue from archaeology. You mentioned archaeological chewing gum, I think, or something.
Yes.
That's one hell of a segue, isn't it, from where you were to what you're doing now? So tell
Yeah,
me,
absolutely.
what is it, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have got a rough idea about a voiceover artist, but what is it a voiceover artist actually does? Perhaps you could tell us a bit more to be clear on that.
Yeah. Do you know, I often meet people at networking events and so on, and when I tell them what I do, people either say, "Oh, voiceover, what's that then?" Or they think they know, and they'll say, "Ah, right, so you do funny voices for cartoons then?" And I'll say, "Well, no, I don't." So there's actually lots of different genres of voiceover, and when I start telling people, you can kind of see a light bulb go on, and they're thinking, "Oh, yeah, I never thought that was actually someone's job." So, there's obviously radio adverts, TV adverts, adverts on the internet that have voiceover, documentaries, of course. Audiobooks is a huge market,
Yeah.
gaming, animation, lots of, phone systems are recorded by voiceover artists, press 1 for this and press 2 for that. Audio tools for museums and guided walks around historic sites. And when you start to think about it, we hear voices all over the place. Our sat nav has been recorded by a real person at one point. The supermarket checkout that tells you that there's an unexpected item in the bagging area, that's been
Right,
recorded by
nice.
a real person. Audio dramas, there's a long list, and video content that's going to be used to explain or promote people's products or services on their websites or, or social media.
Mm.
So, yeah, there's lots of types of voiceover.
Yeah, there's a lot of variety. I think you mentioned a few things there. I mean, there's some of those things I'd probably worked out from previous experience, but there's a lot of other things there you've mentioned. I'm thinking, oh yeah. So it really opens out the horizons enormously.
Mm.
So So, are there any sort of particular sectors that you really enjoy working in more than others?
Yeah, there's a couple. So one sort of connected with my background in archaeology. I love anything with a historical angle to it. So whether that's a voiceover that goes with a museum installation or a guided tour around a museum or a guided walk around historic place. I absolutely love those kinds of things,
Yeah,
and, so working with museum curators or town councils who want to make more of their local heritage, those kind of projects really, really excite me. And the other sector, which actually I didn't mention in my long list, is e-learning, so online training courses. And I've recorded courses for all sorts of different sectors. So I am the voice of safeguarding training for the Church of England.
great.
Not sure that's a claim to fame or not in current climate. I'm the voice of hospitality training for Hilton Garden Inn staff. I've recorded things for the aviation industry, for IT, for banking, um, courses on, equality and diversity or safeguarding or how to use cleaning products, all kinds of things like that. So, I learn quite a lot when I'm recording those scripts as well.
Yeah, because I suppose, with any of these things that you do, you have to have a certain amount of insight into that particular sort of subject matter. And the variety of things you've already mentioned, like from clean products to archaeology to sort of doing museum tours and stuff, even I can see that that could be very interesting. I know from my own experience, I've been on a few tours where you go into the place, you pick up the little headphones and the
Mm,
pack, and as you're walking around, there's some sort of, I don't know, near field control or something. So as you walk from place to place, it automatically gives you a
yeah.
bit of dialogue about the artifact that you're looking at, and it brings it to life. It makes it a lot more
Yeah.
interesting than just looking. Because sometimes when we wander around, maybe sometimes I forgot my glasses, and these little placards on artifacts, you just get they're so boring to read. But when someone brings it to life with a voice, because I think a voice can really make something so much more interesting than just reading the dull page.
Yes,
It
yes. I
brings
think people are much more likely to take the information in, listening to it, than reading, like you say, a big board full of information. You get halfway down it and think, "Oh, I can't be bothered to read all of this." Whereas when you're listening to something, of course, you can walk around whilst you're listening. You don't have to stand still in one spot, and like you say, it does bring it to life for people.
No, I think it's brilliant because it's exactly what you say. I mean, I went to Rhodes last year, and there was this amazing museum there. There's lots of Rhodes have got an amazing history, but it's really frustrating when you're bending down to sort of read the details on a little small print on a plaque, and they're talking about particular detail. Then you're looking up to try and find the thing they're talking
Yeah.
about. But with a guided tour, it's such a pleasure to be able to. Your eyes can be wandering around the artifact that you're looking at whilst you're still listening to the
Mm,
particular detail that's being described. It's much more fun, and it just makes it much easier to relate to what it is you're looking at, which
yeah.
is good. So, have you done sort of those kinds of things? Is your clientele base international by the nature of what you do, or is
Mm,
it very British, or at least in America?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, the beauty of the internet is, of course, it doesn't really matter where you're based. You can be anywhere and work with anybody else anywhere in the world. So yes, I think I've worked with clients on pretty much every continent except Antarctica, perhaps.
Yes, can't imagine there's a lot of demand up there in Inuit, or whether it is the languages in Antarctica. Is that the Arctic? I don't know. So I'm just curious as well. Also, another thing that we hadn't really spoken about before. I mean, there's a lot of AI products coming out now. Have you got any kind of views on artificial intelligence and the use of video production and
Mm.
voices, all that kind of stuff? Is that something you're encountering occasionally?
Yeah, it's hard to know what kind of effect it's having. I actually did a bit of an exercise with my clients a year or so ago and basically asked them, "Look, are you starting to use AI? Are your clients asking for it?" And what they told me at that time was that they weren't and they didn't really want to. They wanted to stick to using real people. They didn't feel that the quality was there yet.
Mm,
They said, some of their clients were starting to ask for it, but what they said to them was, "Look, well, we can do this for you, but bear in mind, it's not going to be as good as what you're used to having from a real person."
sure.
And of course, the AI is only going to get better, but it's never going to be human.
No.
And just things like, when people send me a script, I will spot if there's a mistake in it, and I can go back to the client and say, did you mean to say this? I think what you actually meant was this." And they're usually very grateful, say, "Thank you for picking that up."
Yeah,
Whereas you feed that into an AI, you're just gonna get back whatever you put in.
yeah,
Um, and also, we can still tell, certainly in the moment. If it's a very short script, maybe we can't. If it's something longer, like an e-learning course, for example, you do there's just something about it, and you think, "This just doesn't sound quite right, it's not quite natural."
yeah.
Whether it's because it's perfect, and they don't ever make any mistakes, and they always say the same thing in the same way, whereas there's more variation with a real person, and there's just something about, yes, it isn't human. Um, what I'm hoping is that in the future, like now, people like to shout about their green credentials. In the future, they want to shout about their human credentials and say,
Yeah,
"We use real people to design our logo, to do our voiceover, to make our video, to do our photography," whatever it happens to be. And I think that'll become part of people's selling point. Yeah, people that really care about their products and services, I think will still want real humans to be involved.
I like to agree with that. I really do. One thing I'm curious about, if I may ask, is that I do a little bit of video work, and I know that when I've when I've prepared a script for the video that I want to record, it might be just a 1 minute video or something like that. But what I've very often discovered is writing the script is one thing, but when I come to read it out, it doesn't read well or it doesn't speak well. So I ended up kind of rewriting the script according to how I would actually speak the words.
Mm,
It's one thing to write it on paper, so to speak, but it's another thing to read those words out. So,
yes.
kind of with the scripts that you're given by clients, that you have to kind of adjust them to actually suit the reading, the narrating style rather than the reading style, because they're two quite different things. And I find that they just don't always, they're not always compatible.
They are different things, and excuse me. That they are different things, and you have to be a little bit careful when you're recording a script that a client has sent, because sometimes that script has been signed off about by about 5 different people, so there's no wiggle room. They want you to say what they've written down, even if you think, it doesn't quite scan properly.
Yeah,
However, most of the time, you can make tiny changes to it. Just things like when you're writing something, you might write, "It is." When you're speaking, you'd say, "It's."
yeah,
And it's just making those little changes, um, to a script will make it easier, on the ears when you read it out. Yeah, they are different. I'm doing a project at the moment where I'm working with a town council, to write some scripts that are going to go with boards that are around the town talking about the history of the town, and I'm rewriting what's on the board in a way that would be more natural to be spoken, so the narration will sound more natural once it's recorded.
and I imagine that you've got clients where you get repeat business, and for certain products, I would imagine they want to keep the same kind of identity for the voice. So, are there a certain
Mm.
guidelines where they speak in the sort of the first person or the second person or the third person? Are there certain characteristics that they kind of define for you to use? I'm not explaining that very well. I'm trying to, I suppose, in terms of like defining a brand voice, are there,
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
there-
it tends to be more, sort of adjectives to describe how they want the voice to sound, whether they want it to be upbeat and friendly, or maybe it's calming and soothing, depending on the brand, as you say, they will have an idea of how their brand should sound, and they will give me an idea of what it is they're looking for, so that every time I record something for them, it's in the same kind of style.
yeah, I think that's quite an interesting thing because some there are some things that are actually quite hard to quantify. I know we're going off a complete tangent here, but I think it's like when somebody goes, when you go to have a haircut or a hairstyle, it's very hard to convey in words what it is that you want. And I think
Mm,
it's quite tricky for someone to actually sometimes convey. I'm not sure if style is the right word, but to convey the tone of voice that they're looking to have. I mean, if I take two extremes, I can think of, if perhaps we're preparing um, dare I say, an advert for a funeral parlor, it's going to be very somber, very
mhm,
sympathetic, very empathetic, as opposed to like doing something for a children's play park or something like that, where it's going to be
yeah,
very bubbly and upbeat. There must be, there's a lot of shades of grey in between there where
mm.
something done very formally. So how do people actually? Do they give you an example of the speaking style, or do they just leave it to you to use your own? imagination as to how you think it would?
Yes, it varies. So sometimes they might have had something produced in the past with a, a different voice on it, and they'll say, "We want something similar to this," or "We want something completely different to this." Or they might send me an example to something else saying, "This is a video for another company that we like. We want something like this." Or they might go to my website and listen to the various samples I've got on there and say, "We like this particular sample that you've done. Can you do it in this style?"
Yeah,
Or it might just be simply sending me the music that's going to be in the background, saying, "We want something that's going to fit with this." And that can be really helpful, actually, to hear the music that's going to in the background, because that helps you with the tone and the pace and how loud you need to be. Um, so yeah, it's a variety of ways, and sometimes they haven't got a clue. And so I will just say, "Well, look, I'll record a sample for you. You tell me if I'm on the right lines." And I'm always happy to do that for free for a client, just record a couple of sentences, how I think it might be,
sure.
and then they've got a baseline to work from and say, "Oh, yeah, we like that, but could you go a bit quicker, or could you be a bit slower, or a bit louder, or whatever it happens to be."
Okay. And I can also think of a couple of brands, a couple of household brands where the voice that's in the advert or in the content, it's the same voice that's been there for many years. And I think people come to associate
Mm.
voice with a brand. Does that happen for you? Do you find that? Do you find that certain people know the brand because of your voice?
I mean, certainly I get repeat business from clients because I am the voice of their company. That might not necessarily a brand that anybody would recognize. But for example, I'm the voice of lots of company phone systems, and when they need something updating, of course they'll come to me because they want it to be the same voice again. Or it might be corporate video that they've had done in the past, and they want the same voice because it's part of the same suite of videos, for example.
Okay.
So yeah, think people do get used to a certain voice belonging to a certain product.
Do you find? I mean, when this is another interesting question for me because I think if it's been quite some time between when you first did the work, are you aware of your own voice as it's changed throughout the years, or have you managed to stay quite consistent? Because I think of my own voice, from when I was a lot younger, I'm sure just through the aging process, our vocal cords change and the tone of our voice changes, doesn't it, as we get older?
Mm.
So does that ever become an issue in any way?
It hasn't so far, but yeah, it absolutely could. And of course, the other thing, you might be able to hear that I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. That's a nightmare
Yeah,
because, of course, then I don't sound consistent. And I've actually got a job that I need to do that I needed to do 2 weeks ago that I haven't been able to do yet because it's some updates to a project that already exists. And of course, I need to sound the same as I did before. So the poor client is hanging on. And I tried to do it for them last week, and they said, we can still hear the cold in your voice. We're gonna have to wait a bit longer.
yeah.
So I'm gonna have to try it again this week and see whether I can get that consistent sound back.
Well, I suppose, assuming you're actually feeling good enough, would there be occasions where that kind of voice would be beneficial? For example, I'm thinking of some crazy ideas here, but if someone were kind of looking for a voiceover for a flu product, like a
Mhm.
before and after, speaking in the voice of how you sound with a cold, and drinking the magic remedy, and then your voice sounding magically different afterwards. It's something you can capitalize on.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, last week when I really was, I was feeling okay, but I was sounding terrible. And I had an email from a client that I've worked for before. He's in the radio industry, and he'd got a radio advert that he wanted me to voice. And it was just one line. I thought, well, I can get through one line without coughing. And he said to me, "It's actually an advert for a care home." He says, "And I want you to play the role of an 80-year-old woman." And I said, "Well, you've come to me on the right day. I can definitely do that."
Perfect. I'm really interested to hear that because I just think that it's always good to be able to turn a problem into an opportunity. So that's
Yes.
good. So tell me, we're getting towards the end now, Liz, but what if people would like to get in touch with you? What would be the best way for them to contact you?
So a couple of ways. My website, which is lizdrury.com, so very easy to remember. You can get in touch with me through there. There's all my contact details on there, and of course, examples of my voice and my show reels and so on. Or the other place that I hang out quite a lot is LinkedIn. So if you search for Liz Drury, voiceover artist on LinkedIn, I should pop up.
Fantastic. Well, Liz, it's been a real pleasure to have you here today. So thank you for coming, and
Thank you for having me.
it's been a real pleasure. I look forward to staying in touch, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.